The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered onto the concrete garage floor as I heard my wife's voice drift through the kitchen window above me. Vanessa was on another one of her business calls. But this time, something was different. Her laugh was too breathy, too intimate for discussing pharmaceutical sales quotas. "Oh, Patrick, you're terrible," she giggled into her phone. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow at the Riverside Motel. Same room as last time." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. 20 years of marriage, and I'd never heard her use that tone with me, not even during our honeymoon. I'm Colin Harper, 43 years old, and I fix computer systems for a living. Not exactly the most exciting profession, but it pays the bills and keeps our suburban Buffalo home running. More importantly, it's taught me that every system has vulnerabilities, and every user leaves digital footprints. The kitchen window slammed shut, cutting off Vanessa's conversation. I stared at my 2008 Ford pickup truck, its hood still raised like a gaping mouth waiting to swallow my suddenly shattered world. The engine rebuild I'd been working on for months seemed pointless now. Everything seemed pointless. "Dad, what's wrong? You look like someone passed." My 17-year-old daughter Emma appeared in the garage doorway, backpack slung over her shoulder, car keys jingling in her hand. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just fighting with this carburetor." I forced a smile and wiped my hands on an old rag. "Where are you headed?" "Study group at Madison's house. Mom said I could borrow her car since yours is still in pieces." She rolled her eyes at the truck. "Seriously, Dad, why don't you just buy a new one? Mom makes enough money to afford something that actually runs." There it was again. The constant reminder that my wife had become the primary breadwinner while I struggled to keep my consulting business afloat. Vanessa never let me forget it either, especially during our increasingly frequent arguments about money. "This truck has character," I said, patting the fender. "Besides, I like fixing things that are broken." "Whatever. Don't wait up for me." Emma disappeared back into the house, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts. I pulled out my phone and checked our joint credit card account, something I rarely bothered to do since Vanessa handled most of our finances. My stomach dropped as I scrolled through recent charges. Riverside Motel, $89.99. Lingerie store, $156.78. Expensive restaurant downtown, $247.53. All on days when she claimed to be working late or attending conferences. The evidence was mounting, but I needed more. 20 years of IT work had taught me to gather data before drawing conclusions. I opened Vanessa's laptop, which she'd carelessly left on the kitchen counter. Her WhatsApp was still logged in, and there it was, months of explicit messages with someone named P. Lane. Patrick Lane. My former boss at Meridian Pharmaceuticals, where I'd worked as their IT director before starting my own consulting firm. The same Patrick Lane who'd made my life hell for 2 years before I finally quit. The same arrogant bastard who'd once told me I'd never amount to anything outside his company. "Can't wait to feel you inside me again," read Vanessa's latest message, sent just an hour ago. "Colin's working late on another pathetic computer job. We have all night." My hands shook as I screenshot the conversation. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd expected. It wasn't just the adultery. It was the casual cruelty of her words about my work, my life, everything I'd built for our family. The front door opened and Vanessa's heels clicked across the hardwood floor. I quickly closed the laptop and pretended to read a magazine. "Colin, I'm going out for drinks with the girls from work," she announced, not bothering to look at me. "Don't wait up." She looked stunning, I had to admit. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and she wore a black dress I'd never seen before. Probably bought it with our money to impress her lover. "Which girls?" I asked casually. "Amy Torres from HR, Lisa Chen from marketing, the usual crowd." The lie rolled off her tongue effortlessly. "We're celebrating the quarterly sales numbers." Sounds fun. Drive safe. I kept my voice neutral, but inside I was already planning my next move. After she left, I grabbed my camera and drove to the Riverside Motel. It was a seedy place on the outskirts of town, the kind of establishment that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. Perfect for clandestine affairs. I parked across the street and waited. At 8:47 p.m., Vanessa's silver BMW pulled into the parking lot, followed minutes later by Patrick's black Lexus. They met at room 237, and Patrick's hands were all over my wife before they even got the door closed. I took pictures. Lots of pictures. Then, I walked across the street and keyed a message into the side of Patrick's precious Lexus. Business is booming. As I headed back to my truck, a security camera on the motel office swiveled in my direction. The red recording light blinked steadily. I pulled my baseball cap lower and drove away, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Back home, I uploaded the photos to a secure cloud drive and printed copies for my files. 20 years in IT had taught me the importance of redundant backups. If Vanessa and Patrick wanted to play games, I'd show them what a real professional could do. My phone buzzed with a text from Ray Martinez, my boxing coach at Murphy's gym. You missed training tonight. Everything okay? I typed back, family emergency. See you tomorrow. Ray had been trying to get me back into competitive shape for months, claiming I still had the reflexes of my younger days when I'd boxed in college. Maybe it was time to take him up on that offer. Something told me I was going to need every advantage I could get in the fight ahead. As I sat in my home office, surrounded by computer equipment and the detritus of my struggling business, I couldn't help but smile. Vanessa and Patrick thought they were so clever, so sophisticated. They had no idea they were dealing with someone who understood systems, who knew how to find weaknesses and exploit them. Hell hath no fury like an IT guy with receipts, baby, I muttered to myself, already planning phase 2 of my investigation. The next morning, Vanessa floated into the kitchen like she was walking on air. Her post-adultery glow was nauseating, but I kept my expression neutral as I sipped my coffee and read the news on my tablet. You're up early, she said, pouring herself orange juice. Don't you have that server maintenance job in Rochester today? Postponed until next week. Client had budget issues. I looked up from my tablet. How were drinks with the girls? For just a split second, her smile faltered. Oh, you know how it is. Amy got a little too drunk and started complaining about her divorce again. We ended up at that new wine bar downtown until they closed. Another lie. I'd already checked her location history through our shared family plan. She'd been at the Riverside Motel until 11:30 p.m., then drove straight home. Sounds exhausting, I said. Maybe you should take it easy tonight. Actually, I have another late meeting. Big presentation for the regional directors tomorrow. She avoided eye contact, busying herself with her phone. Patrick wants the whole team to review the numbers one more time. Patrick Lane? I kept my voice casual. I thought he was transferred to the Syracuse office. He was, but he's back now, promoted to regional director. Her voice carried a note of pride that made my stomach churn. He specifically requested me for his team. Says I have real potential for advancement. I bet he did. That's great, honey. You've worked so hard for recognition. The irony wasn't lost on me. Vanessa had indeed worked hard, just not at selling pharmaceuticals. After she left for work, I drove to Murphy's gym. The converted warehouse smelled like sweat, leather, and determination. Ray was in the ring with a young heavyweight, calling out combinations. Harper, about time you showed up. Ray climbed through the ropes, his weathered face creased with concern. You look like hell. What's eating you? I told him everything. Ray listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or shaking his head. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. 20 years, he finally said. That's a lot of history to throw away. She already threw it away. I'm just deciding what to do with the pieces. Ray studied me with the same intensity he used to analyze opponents before a fight. You want my advice? Don't go in swinging wild. That's how you get knocked out. You want to win? Bleed them slow. Make every punch count. That afternoon, I began my systematic destruction of Patrick Lane's life. I started with his financial records, which weren't as secure as he probably thought. His password for the company system was still Lexus 2019, the same one he'd used when I worked there. Some people never learn. Patrick had been busy. Expense reports showed lavish dinners charged to the company, hotel rooms in cities where he had no business meetings, and suspicious transfers between accounts. He was embezzling, and he was sloppy about it. I copied everything to encrypted drives and started building a comprehensive dossier. Bank records, email communications, travel receipts, all painting a picture of a man who thought he was untouchable. My neighbor Lisa knocked on my door around dinner time, holding a casserole dish and wearing her trademark, gossipy expression. "Colin, I hope you don't mind me asking, but is everything okay with you and Vanessa?" She leaned in conspiratorially. "I've noticed she's been coming home very late lately, and yesterday I saw a man in an expensive car parked across the street watching your house." "Really? What kind of car?" "Black Lexus, handsome older man, silver hair. He sat there for almost an hour before driving away." So Patrick was stalking our house now. The arrogance was breathtaking. "Probably just someone lost," I said. "But thanks for keeping an eye out." "Of course, dear. We neighbors have to stick together." Lisa handed me the casserole. "Tuna noodle, your favorite." That evening, Vanessa came home at midnight with her hair mussed and her lipstick gone. She claimed the meeting had run late and they'd grab dinner afterward. I nodded sympathetically and told her about Lisa's casserole. "That woman needs to mind her own business," Vanessa snapped. "She's probably making up stories because her own life is so boring." She seemed genuinely concerned. Said she saw a strange man watching our house. Vanessa's face went pale. "What kind of man?" "Older guy in a black Lexus. Ring any bells?" "No, of course not. Why would it?" But her voice was shaky, and she avoided eye contact. The next morning, I followed Vanessa to work. She met Patrick in the parking garage of the Meridian building, and they embraced passionately before heading inside together. I took more pictures, then drove to the corporate headquarters downtown. The annual Meridian Pharmaceuticals Charity Gala was being held at the Statler Hotel next month. As a former employee, I was still on their mailing list. I RSVP'd for 2, knowing Vanessa would insist on attending. It would be the perfect venue for the next phase of my plan. That afternoon, I visited Amy Torres at her office. Amy had always been friendly during my time at Meridian, and I was curious about her role in Vanessa's sudden career advancement. "Colin, what a surprise." Amy's smile seemed forced. "What brings you by?" "Just wanted to thank you for looking out for Vanessa. She mentioned you've been helping her navigate the politics with the new regional director." Amy's expression shifted slightly. "Patrick's a good boss, very supportive of ambitious women." "I'm sure he is. Vanessa speaks very highly of him." "Does she?" Amy's voice carried an odd note. "That's interesting." I left the meeting with more questions than answers, but something about Amy's reaction bothered me. There was history there, something I was missing. That evening, Vanessa announced she was working late again. I waited until she left, then drove to Patrick's luxury apartment complex. The doorman recognized me from my old IT days and waved me through without question. Patrick's apartment was on the 15th floor, overlooking the city. I'd been there before for company parties, back when we pretended to be friends. The spare key was still hidden in the fake rock by his door. Some habits never change. Inside, I methodically destroyed everything Patrick valued most. His golf trophies went into the garbage disposal. His expensive suits got creative alterations with a box cutter. His wine collection found a new home in the kitchen sink. But the real masterpiece was his home office. I accessed his personal computer and found a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. Photos of multiple affairs, financial records showing systematic embezzlement, and email chains revealing his plan to use his position to coerce favors from female employees. I copied everything to multiple drives, then left a simple note on his keyboard. "Not so untouchable now, are you?" As I prepared to leave, I heard voices in the hallway. Patrick was coming home early, and he wasn't alone. I slipped into the bedroom closet just as the front door opened. "Can't believe someone broke in," Patrick was saying. "The doorman swears he didn't see anyone suspicious." "Maybe it was random," said a voice I recognized as building security. "We'll check the cameras, but these units are supposed to be secure." They walked through the apartment, Patrick's voice rising with each new discovery. When they reached the office and found my note, he let out a string of curses that would make a sailor blush. "This is personal," he told the security guard. "Someone's targeting me specifically." "Any idea who might want to hurt you, Mr. Lane?" Patrick was quiet for a long moment. "I may have made some enemies in my personal life recently." I waited in the closet for another hour before they finally left. As I made my escape, I couldn't help but smile. Patrick was starting to understand that actions have consequences. The next morning, I woke to find Vanessa in tears at the kitchen table. "What's wrong?" I asked, though I had a pretty good idea. "Someone broke into Patrick's apartment last night. Destroyed thousands of dollars worth of belongings." She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Who would do something like that? Sounds like he made some serious enemies. Maybe it's connected to his work. Patrick thinks it might be someone from his past, an ex-girlfriend or business rival." She wiped her nose with a tissue. "He's talking about hiring private security. That seems extreme for a simple break-in." "It wasn't simple, Colin. This was personal, vindictive. Someone really wants to hurt him." I poured myself coffee and sat across from her. "Well, I'm sure the police will figure it out. People like Patrick usually get what's coming to them eventually." Vanessa stared at me for a long moment, as if seeing me clearly for the first time in years. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, honey. Just that karma has a way of catching up with people who think they're above the rules." She left for work without another word, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. The game was accelerating, and soon everyone would have to choose sides. The anonymous tip I'd sent to Meridian's corporate ethics hotline was bearing fruit faster than I'd expected. By Thursday morning, Patrick had been suspended pending investigation, and Vanessa was a nervous wreck. "They're saying he misappropriated company funds," she whispered into her phone, pacing around our living room while I pretended to work on my laptop. "No, Amy. I don't know anything about his expense reports. Why would I?" I looked up from my screen. "Everything okay?" "Work drama. Someone's making false accusations against Patrick." Her voice was shaky. "They're probably just jealous of his success." "What kind of accusations?" "Financial irregularities. It's ridiculous. Patrick's the most honest person I know." I almost choked on my coffee. Patrick Lane was many things, but honest wasn't one of them. The evidence I'd gathered showed systematic fraud going back 3 years, totaling nearly $500,000. "I'm sure it will all work out," I said. "The truth has a way of coming to light." That afternoon I made my next move. I'd been monitoring Patrick's email account since the apartment break-in, and his desperation was becoming increasingly obvious. He was reaching out to contacts at other pharmaceutical companies, trying to line up a new position before the investigation concluded. I forwarded his most damning emails to the investigators, along with copies of his personal financial records showing unexplained deposits. Then I sent a carefully crafted message to the local business journal's investigative reporter, suggesting she look into corruption at Meridian Pharmaceuticals. By Friday, the story was front-page news. "Pharma exec suspended in fraud probe," screamed the headline, complete with Patrick's corporate headshot and details about the ongoing investigation. Vanessa didn't come home that night. I found her at Amy Torres's apartment Saturday morning, drunk and disheveled. Amy answered the door in a bathrobe, her expression hostile. "She doesn't want to see you," Amy said, trying to block my view. "She's my wife. I'm taking her home." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you destroyed her life." I pushed past Amy into the living room, where Vanessa was curled up on the couch, clutching a wine glass like a lifeline. "Vanessa, we need to talk." She looked up at me with red eyes. "Did you do it? Did you destroy Patrick?" "I don't know what you mean." "Don't lie to me, Colin. The timing is too convenient. Patrick gets suspended right after someone breaks into his apartment? Someone who knew exactly what to look for?" Amy stepped between us. "You need to leave. Now. This is between my wife and me." "Your wife who you've been stalking and harassing?" Amy's voice was venomous. "Yes, I know about your little photography hobby. Patrick told me about the motel pictures. So they knew I was onto them. That changed things." "Interesting that you're so involved in my wife's affair," I said to Amy. "Almost like you're personally invested in the outcome." Amy's face flushed. "I'm protecting my friend from an abusive husband." "Abusive? I've never laid a hand on her." "Emotional abuse is still abuse. Vanessa told me how you've been controlling her, checking her phone, questioning her every move." I laughed, which seemed to infuriate Amy even more. "Is that the story you're going with? That I'm the bad guy here?" "You destroyed an innocent man's career out of jealousy and paranoia," Amy shot back. "Patrick never did anything to you. Patrick Lane is a thief and a predator. The investigation will prove that. The investigation is based on fabricated evidence. Everyone knows that." I studied Amy's face, noting the way her hands shook with rage. There was something deeper here, something personal. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked quietly. "Planning what?" "The affair, the setup, this whole elaborate scheme to destroy my marriage." Amy and Vanessa exchanged glances, confirming my suspicions. "You're paranoid," Amy said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Am I? Let me guess. You and Patrick have history. Maybe you thought you were going to be his next promotion, but he chose my wife instead. So you decided to use Vanessa to get back at both of us." Amy's face went white. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? Patrick fired you from Meridian 5 years ago for harassment. You blamed me for not supporting your appeal. So you waited, planned, and found the perfect way to destroy both our lives." Vanessa was staring at Amy with growing horror. "Amy, is that true?" "It's not what you think. You used me." Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. "You encouraged me to pursue Patrick, told me I deserved better than Colin. You set this whole thing up." Amy's composure cracked. "You were miserable. Your husband was holding you back, and Patrick was using you. I was trying to help you see the truth. By destroying my marriage, by showing you that both men in your life were worthless." The admission hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Vanessa set down her wine glass and stood unsteadily. "Take me home, Colin." The drive back was silent except for Vanessa's occasional sniffles. When we reached our house, she finally spoke. "I'm sorry." "For which part? The affair, the lies, or letting your psychotic friend manipulate you into destroying our family?" "All of it. I know you'll never forgive me, but I need you to know that I never meant for it to go this far." I parked in our driveway and turned to face her. "How far did you think it would go? Did you really believe you could have an affair with my former boss, and I'd never find out? Amy said you'd never notice, that you were too wrapped up in your failing business to pay attention to me anymore. So you decided to cheat instead of talking to me about our problems?" Vanessa was crying again. "I felt invisible, Colin. You stopped seeing me years ago. Patrick made me feel attractive, desired, important. Patrick made you feel like a conquest. There's a difference." We sat in silence for several minutes before Vanessa spoke again. "What happens now?" Now you pack a bag and stay somewhere else while I decide whether our marriage is worth saving." "Where am I supposed to go?" "Amy obviously has her own agenda, and Patrick won't return my calls. That's not my problem anymore." I got out of the car and walked into the house, leaving Vanessa sitting in the driveway. Through the window, I watched her make several phone calls, each one apparently unsuccessful. Finally, she came inside and went upstairs to pack. An hour later, she was gone. I spent the weekend alone, thinking about 20 years of marriage and whether any of it had been real. The house felt different without Vanessa's presence. Quieter, but also somehow cleaner, like an infection had been removed. Monday morning brought news that Patrick had been arrested on embezzlement charges. The evidence was overwhelming, and his bail was set at $200,000. According to the news report, he was also facing additional charges related to harassment and abuse of power. My phone rang. It was Vanessa. "Did you see the news about Patrick?" "Hard to miss. It's all over the local stations. He's asking me to post his bail." I almost dropped the phone. "Are you serious?" "He says if I really loved him, I'd help him through this difficult time." "Vanessa, the man is a criminal. He used you, just like he used every other woman who worked for him." "I know that now, but part of me still feels responsible for what happened to him." "You're not responsible for his choices. He's a grown man who decided to steal money and coerce women into sleeping with him." There was a long pause. "Amy called me this morning." "What did she want?" "She's being investigated too. Apparently, she helped cover up Patrick's harassment of other employees. She might lose her job." "Good. Colin, I think I'm in trouble too. They want to interview me about my relationship with Patrick and about whether I knew about the financial irregularities." For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt a flicker of sympathy for my wife. She'd been manipulated by people she trusted, and now she was facing the consequences of their actions. "Get a lawyer," I said. "Don't talk to anyone without legal representation." "I can't afford a lawyer. My credit cards are maxed out, and I don't have access to our joint accounts anymore." I'd frozen those accounts as soon as I discovered the affair, transferring the money to a separate account in my name only. "That's what happens when you use our money to fund your affair." "Please, Colin. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm scared." I thought about Ray's advice. Bleed them slow. Vanessa was already bleeding from self-inflicted wounds. The question was whether I wanted to finish her off or throw her a lifeline. "I'll pay for the lawyer," I said finally. "But this doesn't mean we're reconciling. I'm doing it for Emma's sake, not yours." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You're about to find out what it really costs to betray someone who loves you." The lawyer I hired for Vanessa was competent, but not exceptional, exactly what she deserved. Meanwhile, I was putting the finishing touches on my masterpiece of revenge. The annual Meridian Pharmaceuticals charity gala was 3 weeks away, and I had every intention of making it a night to remember. Patrick's arrest had sent shockwaves through the company, but the investigation was far from over. The FBI had seized his computers and financial records, uncovering a web of corruption that implicated several other employees. Amy Torres was suspended pending review, and rumors were swirling about additional arrests. Vanessa was staying at a cheap motel near the airport, paying with what little money she had left. Her lawyer had advised her to cooperate fully with investigators, which meant admitting to the affair and providing details about Patrick's behavior. The humiliation was eating her alive. "They want me to testify against him," she told me during one of our awkward phone conversations. "The prosecutor says Patrick's lawyers might try to claim I was a willing participant in his schemes." "Were you?" "Of course not. I didn't know about the embezzlement or the other women. I thought I was special to him." "You were special. You were the one stupid enough to risk everything for a few months of mediocre closeness with a criminal." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "I deserve that," she said finally. "You deserve worse." But I wasn't done with her yet. or with Amy Torres, who was about to learn that revenge is a dish best served at exactly the right temperature. I'd been monitoring Amy's communications since the apartment break-in, and her desperation was becoming increasingly obvious. She was reaching out to former colleagues, trying to find allies who would vouch for her character. Most were politely declining to get involved. Amy had also been drinking heavily, based on her social media posts and credit card records. Divorced, unemployed, and facing potential criminal charges, she was spiraling toward rock bottom. It was almost too easy. I arranged to meet her at Murphy's Bar, a dive establishment near the gym where Ray trained fighters. The irony wasn't lost on me. Amy was about to get knocked out, just not in the way she expected. She arrived 20 minutes late, already half drunk and reeking of desperation. "Colin, I should have known you'd want to gloat. Actually, I wanted to offer you a deal." Amy laughed bitterly. "What kind of deal?" "Information in exchange for mercy. Tell me everything about your plan to destroy my marriage, and I'll consider not pressing charges for harassment and conspiracy." "You can't prove I did anything illegal." I pulled out my phone and played a recording of her drunken confession from Vanessa's apartment. Her face went white as her own words filled the air. "You recorded me without consent. That's illegal in New York." "Actually, it's not. New York is a one-party consent state, and Vanessa was present during our conversation. She can testify that she agreed to the recording." Amy's hands shook as she reached for her drink. "What do you want to know?" "Start from the beginning. When did you first decide to target my wife?" The story that emerged was even more twisted than I'd imagined. Amy's obsession with revenge had been festering for years, ever since her termination from Meridian. She'd blamed me for not supporting her appeal, even though her harassment of male colleagues had been well documented. She'd kept tabs on both Vanessa and Patrick, waiting for the right moment to strike. When Patrick was promoted to regional director, Amy saw her opportunity. She'd cultivated a friendship with Vanessa, slowly poisoning her against me while simultaneously feeding Patrick information about my wife's vulnerabilities. "You orchestrated the whole thing," I said, recording every word. "I gave them opportunities. They made their own choices. You manipulated two people into destroying their lives just to get back at me for something I had no control over." Amy's laugh was hollow. "You had more control than you think. One word from you could have saved my career. Your career was over the moment you decided to harass your coworkers. I was just the IT guy who documented your inappropriate emails. You could have deleted them. And committed a felony? I don't think so." We sat in silence for several minutes while Amy processed the reality of her situation. She was facing criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and complete social ostracism. Her elaborate revenge plot had backfired spectacularly. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "A full confession, written, signed, and witnessed. Admit what you did to my marriage and take responsibility for your actions." "And in exchange?" "I won't pursue additional charges against you. The FBI and local prosecutors can handle your legal troubles, but I won't make them worse than they already are." Amy stared into her drink for a long moment. "You know, I used to think you were weak, boring, beneath Vanessa's standards. And now? Now I think you might be the most dangerous man I've ever met." She was right, but I wasn't about to admit it. "I'm just someone who believes in consequences." Amy wrote out her confession on bar napkins, her handwriting shaky from alcohol and fear. The bartender witnessed her signature, and I photographed every page with my phone. "There," she said, sliding the napkins across the table. "Are we done?" "Almost. There's one more thing I need from you." "What?" "I want you to call Vanessa and tell her the truth about everything, tonight. She already knows. She knows you manipulated her, but she doesn't know the full extent of your obsession with me. She doesn't know that you've been planning this for 5 years, or that you deliberately chose Patrick because you knew it would hurt me the most." Amy's face crumpled. Please don't make me do that. You created this mess. You can help clean it up. I watched as Amy made the call, her voice breaking as she confessed the full scope of her manipulation to my wife. Vanessa's responses were inaudible, but I could imagine her shock and horror as the truth finally came to light. When the call ended, Amy was crying. "I never meant for it to go this far," she whispered. "Yes, you did. You wanted to destroy everything I cared about, and you almost succeeded." Almost. I stood up and dropped a 20 on the table. The key word is almost. You forgot that I'm very good at my job, and my job is fixing broken systems. What are you going to do now? Now I'm going to finish what you started. I left Amy sitting alone at the bar, staring at her reflection in the bottom of an empty glass. Outside, Ray was waiting in his car. "How did it go?" he asked. "Better than expected. She confessed to everything." "And your wife?" "Vanessa's about to learn that there are worse things than being betrayed by your husband." Ray studied my face in the dim light from the street lamp. "You sure about this path you're on? Once you cross certain lines, there's no going back." "I crossed those lines the moment I found out about the affair. Everything since then has just been follow-through. And when it's over? What then?" I thought about the question as Ray drove me back to my car. What did come after revenge? I'd been so focused on making them pay that I hadn't considered what my life would look like when the dust settled. "I guess I'll find out," I said finally. That night, Vanessa called me in tears. "Amy told me everything," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Colin. I had no idea how deep her hatred went." "Does it change anything?" "It changes everything. I wasn't just unfaithful. I was a weapon someone else used to hurt you. I feel sick." "You should feel sick. You let yourself be manipulated into destroying 20 years of marriage." I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to understand that I never wanted to hurt you. I was just so lost, so desperate to feel important again. And now? Now I feel like the biggest fool who ever lived. Patrick won't even take my calls. Amy used me like a puppet, and I've lost everything that ever mattered to me. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "The gala is next week," I said. "I know. My lawyer says I probably shouldn't attend given the investigation." "Oh, you're definitely going to attend. We both are." "Colin, what are you planning?" "Justice, Vanessa. I'm planning justice." The Statler Hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed into a pharmaceutical wonderland, complete with corporate banners, silent auction displays, and enough networking opportunities to choke a sales rep. I adjusted my black tie and surveyed the crowd, noting the absence of certain key players. Patrick Lane was still in jail, unable to make bail after additional charges were filed. Amy Torres was persona non grata, her invitation rescinded after her suspension. But plenty of other Meridian employees were present, including the senior executives who would soon learn some uncomfortable truths about their company. Vanessa stood beside me in a conservative navy dress, her face pale and her hands shaking slightly. She'd lost weight over the past month, and the stress was showing in the dark circles under her eyes. "I still don't understand why you wanted me here," she whispered as we made our way to our assigned table. "Because this story involves you. You should be present for the ending." The evening began with cocktails and small talk. I made polite conversation with former colleagues, accepted condolences about my marital difficulties, and generally played the role of the wronged husband seeking closure. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. Dr. Margaret Chen, Meridian's CEO, took the stage at 8 o'clock to welcome the guests and introduce the evening's program. The charity auction would be followed by awards presentations and closing remarks from the board of directors. "Before we begin," Dr. Chen announced, "I want to address the recent challenges our company has faced. The allegations against certain employees are deeply troubling, and we are cooperating fully with law enforcement to ensure justice is served." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. I checked my phone and confirmed that everything was ready for my presentation. The auction proceeded smoothly, with various pharmaceutical equipment and vacation packages commanding respectable bids. I won a weekend in the Adirondacks for $5,000, money well spent considering what I was about to receive in return. At 9:30, Dr. Chen returned to the podium to introduce the awards segment. Our first presenter tonight is Colin Harper, former IT director and current systems consultant. Colin will be presenting the Employee Excellence Award to this year's Outstanding Sales Representative. I walked to the stage amid scattered applause, carrying a laptop bag that contained far more than presentation slides. The podium microphone was already activated, and the large screens on either side of the stage displayed the Meridian logo. Thank you, Dr. Chen. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be here tonight, celebrating the achievements of Meridian's sales team. I paused to connect my laptop to the presentation system, making sure the audio and video feeds were properly configured. Excellence in sales requires dedication, integrity, and trust. Clients must believe that our representatives are honest, ethical, and committed to their success. The crowd was paying polite attention, expecting a routine corporate speech about teamwork and values. Unfortunately, recent events have shown us that not all of our sales representatives live up to these standards. Dr. Chen shifted uncomfortably in her seat. This wasn't the speech she'd expected. Tonight, I want to share some information that I believe will be of interest to everyone in this room. I clicked to the first slide, which displayed Patrick Lane's employee photo alongside his arrest record. Patrick Lane, our former regional director, was recently arrested on charges of embezzlement and harassment, but the scope of his crimes goes far beyond what has been reported in the media. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several executives were reaching for their phones, probably trying to figure out how to stop my presentation. Mr. Lane systematically stole nearly $600,000 from this company over a 3-year period. He used his position to coerce female employees into private relationships, threatening their careers if they refused his advances. The next slide showed bank records documenting Patrick's fraudulent transfers. But perhaps most disturbing is the network of accomplices who helped him cover his tracks. Amy Torres' photo appeared on screen, followed by a detailed timeline of her involvement in the conspiracy. Amy Torres, former HR manager, actively suppressed complaints against Mr. Lane and retaliated against employees who attempted to report his behavior. I could see security guards moving toward the stage, but I still had several minutes before they could reach me. The corruption at Meridian goes deeper than 2 rogue employees. It represents a systematic failure of leadership and oversight. The next slide contained audio clips of recorded conversations between Patrick and various company executives, discussing ways to minimize legal exposure and protect the company's reputation. These recordings demonstrate that senior management was aware of Mr. Lane's criminal behavior and chose to cover it up rather than protect their employees. Dr. Chen was frantically gesturing to security, but I'd disabled their ability to cut the audio feed remotely. The presentation would continue until I decided to end it. But tonight isn't just about corporate corruption, it's also about personal betrayal. Vanessa's face appeared on the screen, looking radiant and happy in photos from our early marriage. My wife, Vanessa Harper, was recruited by Amy Torres to participate in an elaborate revenge scheme targeting me personally. The photos changed to surveillance images of Vanessa and Patrick at the Riverside Motel. Mrs. Harper engaged in a 6-month affair with Mr. Lane, using our joint credit cards to fund their encounters and lying repeatedly about her whereabouts. Vanessa had gone completely white and was gripping the edge of the table to keep from falling over. The affair was orchestrated by Amy Torres as part of a 5-year plan to destroy my marriage and career. Ms. Torres blamed me for her termination from Meridian and decided that the best way to get revenge was to manipulate my wife into infidelity. I clicked to the next slide, which contained excerpts from Amy's written confession. As you can see, this conspiracy involved multiple felonies, including fraud, harassment, and conspiracy to commit emotional distress. Security guards had finally reached the stage, but I raised my hand to stop them. "I'm almost finished, gentlemen." I turned back to the microphone for my closing statement. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight you've learned that your company is corrupt, your leadership is compromised, and your colleagues cannot be trusted. But you've also learned something more important." The final slide appeared on screen. A photo of me sitting in my home office, surrounded by computer equipment and evidence files. You've learned that when someone tries to destroy an IT professional, they better make sure they finish the job, because we know how to find evidence, how to trace digital footprints, and how to turn their own technology against them. I closed my laptop and smiled at the stunned crowd. The FBI has copies of everything I've shown you tonight. I expect additional arrests will follow shortly. As for my wife and her co-conspirators, they've already lost everything that mattered to them. The security guards moved to escort me from the stage, but I wasn't finished yet. "Oh, and one more thing," I said, pulling out my phone. "This entire presentation has been live-streamed to social media. By morning, everyone in Buffalo will know exactly what kind of company Meridian Pharmaceuticals really is." The ballroom erupted in chaos as I was led away. Executives were shouting into phones, reporters were taking notes, and several attendees were heading for the exits. I caught a glimpse of Vanessa being comforted by strangers, her face buried in her hands. Outside the hotel, Ray was waiting with my truck. "How did it go?" he asked as we drove away from the scene. "Better than I hoped. The live stream got over 10,000 viewers, and the local news stations are already running the story." "And your wife?" "My soon-to-be ex-wife just learned that actions have consequences." Ray was quiet for several miles before speaking again. "You know there's no coming back from this, right? You've burned every bridge and destroyed every relationship." "Good. Those bridges led to places I never want to visit again." "What about your daughter? She's going to see all of this." I'd been dreading that conversation, but Emma deserved to know the truth about what had happened to our family. She's old enough to understand that her mother made choices that had consequences. I won't apologize for defending myself against people who tried to destroy me. My phone was buzzing constantly with calls from reporters, lawyers, and former colleagues. I turned it off and focused on the road ahead. "So what now?" Ray asked. "Now I start over. New city, new business, new life." "Any regrets?" I thought about the question as we pulled into my driveway. Did I regret exposing the corruption at Meridian? No. Did I regret humiliating the people who had betrayed me? Absolutely not. The only thing I regret is trusting people who didn't deserve it in the first place. Inside my house, I poured myself a whiskey and sat down at my computer to read the early news coverage of the gala incident. The headlines were everything I'd hoped for. Pharmaceutical exec exposes massive corruption. Husband's revenge rocks, charity gala. Meridian stock plunges after explosive revelations. By morning, Patrick would be facing additional charges. Amy would be under federal investigation, and Vanessa would be known throughout Buffalo as the woman who destroyed her marriage for a criminal. The revenge was complete, devastating, and absolutely justified. I raised my glass in a toast to the empty house. "Just business, baby,"